Every sign has its highs and its lows, and that's part of why I love astrology so much because it's never cut and dried. It's never something where you just reach the end and there's no more to learn. There are always multiple facets of what we can explore as we're talking about these archetypes. And of course, we're taking these archetypes personally and we're looking at how we act out these archetypes in our own life. And today, we're going to talk about the gifts and the shadows of Aries. I'm Nafa Perkins of Electra Astrology, and I want to tell you about a new class that I'm teaching. It's called Wired for Emotions, the astrology of your stress response. And speaking of stress, Aries can be a very stressful sign. That's because it rules things like war, but it also rules things like boundaries. And that's what we need in order to avoid things like wars, whether they are out there or in here. So if you're interested in checking out this class, you can find it in the link below, in the box below. And if you're listening to this in the future, find me at electraastrology.com, and I will probably have other classes that I'm teaching by the time you're listening to this. So, this episode is taken from my podcast, Star Narratives. It was released in season 5, and I am editing them and re releasing them here on YouTube so that all of the sun sign teachings can be a cohesive body of work. If you're new here, go ahead and listen to some of these teachings. It doesn't matter if you have a sun sign in Aries, we all have all of the signs, planets, placements in our charts. So, we're all interacting with these archetypes every single day. So even if you know nothing about Aries and you know that you're not an Aries, you're still going to get some really good information out of these teachings. I designed them so that you can self-reflect and ask yourself questions and, just like any good memoir, kind of tune in and say, oh my God, that sounds familiar. I do that. And we're looking at awakening here. This is awakening with astrology. And, that's what we're doing. So let's go ahead and we're going to dive deeper into the archetype of Aries. We're looking at Aries again. We started looking at the difference between Pisces and Aries, where we leave the realm of the spiritual and we enter into the realm of human embodiment. And this week, we're going to be looking at the gifts and the shadows of Aries. We are looking at the shadows of our internal Aries energy and what needs to be healed. And all of us have different versions of our Aries shadows. I find that there are a few ways that an Aries shadow will show up. So, in one case, Aries is about war and boundaries and moving toward that which we desire. And so you will find that there are some people that are out of balance with their Aries energy, and that imbalance shows up as being angry, having really rigid boundaries, personal boundaries, and not necessarily respecting other people's boundaries. So we would call that a problem with outgoing boundaries. So steamrolling or coercing or demanding. We also look at anger, and anger is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's certainly a bad thing when it is used to intimidate or to threaten or to win at all costs. So if you are somebody that relates to having a lot of Aries in your chart, where you're relating to the world with a lot of anger, short-temperedness, or demanding that people do exactly what you want to do, or having very rigid boundaries around what you will or won't do, then it's worth exploring how that started. Why is that? A lot of times we will look at that aggressive feeling in the body as something that eventually has to explode outward. And that can explode outward and honking your horn at drivers or yelling at the clerk in the grocery store. When you're looking at this idea of aggression, how did it start? When we look back to childhood, who was modeling aggression to you? Who was modeling steamrolling and being angry as a way to get your needs met? The other shadow side of Aries that I find pops up for people, and this would be people that don't know how to access their Aries energy very well, or there is fear around accessing the energy. And those are the people that tend to feel invisible, or they feel like they're not allowed to have boundaries. They're not allowed to say no, or they're not allowed to be angry. They're smiling instead of asserting themselves. I think along with this one, there can come a sense of feeling like a loser. I never win. I never make good decisions. Both sides of these shadows, in a way, stem from powerlessness. A sense of like the only way to get my way is either to yell and scream and kick and beat, or I am not going to get my way anyway. So why would I even try to fight? If you're relating to either side of those, how did that start? Because when we're looking at Aries and we're saying, what are the gifts of Aries? We're saying the gifts of Aries come in knowing oneself and being very strong in one sense of identity, not being afraid of competition. In fact, looking at competition as something that's exciting, not something that has to be won at all costs or else I'm going to be a sore loser. And not, oh my God, competition just scares me and I don't even want to engage in it. Those would be shadow sides of competition, but rather just the thrill and the excitement of getting to get in there and show yourself, get that adrenaline out. Aries is also teaching us how to be independent and how to not be afraid. There's a lot to do with courage and understanding that even when things are not going our way, even when we lose a battle, even when we don't feel highly confident, that there's something important about going through the motions, going through the competition, learning from what didn't go well, learning from what did go well. And ideally, we're having fun with it. Aries is a fire sign, and fire signs love to have fun. And the more that we come to understand our competitive nature and come to understand what we're really good at and how we can win the proverbial battle, how we can determine what our boundaries are and advocate for them. And we don't have to get angry and explosive to get our way. And we don't have to back down and become mute in order to avoid conflict. That there is power in just stepping forward with confidence, feet firmly planted on the ground, with a sense of willingness to face whatever is being shown to us. That's really the magical point with Aries. That is where we learn that it is worth advocating for ourselves, but that we don't have to go overboard and intimidate people to get our needs met. We don't have to explode, and we don't have to be meek. So we're learning how to do that. And I would say that a lot of times we look at other people and we say, I'm acting this way because of the people around me. I am explosive because somebody's not respecting my boundaries, or I am meek because this person intimidates me. But the truth, and what we're trying to really discern through this particular period, are the places where we are our own worst enemy, where we hold beliefs about ourselves around power. Both sides of the spectrum lead us to the same place, which is I feel powerless. I feel like I don't have what it takes to get these needs met. And when we dial down into that, the question is, well, what are your beliefs about yourself? What are you telling yourself? And interestingly enough, right now, as I'm recording this, Mercury is in retrograde. Mercury is the planet that rules the mind. And a lot of us have these thoughts that just go on autopilot through the background, almost like the way some people leave the TV on in a living room. And every once in a while, you hear bits and pieces, and it's sort of there forming your perception of the world, of your life. So if your Mercury, if your brain has these perceptions of who you are, I am invisible, I am a loser, everybody ticks me off, I can't stand people. If you have those running in the background of your mind, it's going to color and inform how you react on an unconscious level. And most of us are reacting unconsciously on autopilot as we're moving through our days trying to get our stuff done. So this is your invitation to step in and examine that Aries energy a little bit more in your life So, what we're looking for, especially in the next few days, as this teaching is fresh in your mind, what you're looking for is, where does your personal power come from? What is the nature of your personal power? So, I invite you to explore that for a minute here and close your eyes, put your feet on the floor, square your shoulders, and just take a few deep breaths into your heart. And the heart is definitely one of our seats of power. When we follow our heart, it rarely leads us astray. When we're following our heart, we're following the things that we love, not the things that we want or need or feel like we should do. It's the things that we genuinely love. And there's power in love. And regardless of what your Aries wound might be and how it started, you do have a well of power that is available to you as long as you are acknowledging it and tuning into it. And as we work with the energy of the here and the now, we're finding that power. We're reminding ourselves of what is inherently ours, of what we hold, simply by being embodied, having a connection with higher power, your own version of internalized higher power. And we know that the shadow of any sign relates to fear, and the light of any sign relates to love. So, whether we are experiencing fear or love in any given moment is going to tell us a lot about whether we are in the shadow side or the light side of any of these human archetypes. So, when you find yourself in the fear side, I'm not good enough, nobody respects me, I have to fight for anything that I want, it can be helpful to tune into your heart and remember that love and following what you love, advocating for what you love, advocating for what you know to be true can be one of the bridges that takes you out of fear and into a place where you get your power back. So it's not that we are giving away our power and it's gone. It's not that we don't have any power and it's never been there. It's that we forget that we have power, forget how powerful we are. And that power, it's not big and fancy. It doesn't put a big crown on our head or $1 million in our bank account or any of these things that we perceive power to be. It's just simply a power of tuning in with your heart and of moving in the direction of what you love and what feels good and pure and clean to you. And when we're looking at Aries, a lot of Aries instinct comes from trusting our gut. And you can look at your sacral area as another seat of power in your system. So take a few deep breaths into your sacral area, into your root chakra, your sacral chakra, into your solar plexus. You know, all of these are places of power. They all carry a different version of power, but they all, when we can tune into them and really get settled in the body, get out of the mind, and remember that we are equipped with connection to spirit, with a connection to our physicality, when we can connect in with the present moment instead of all of this storytelling that we do around what this means and what that means, then we also tap into a significant amount of power, of real power. I hope this was helpful. Be sure to tune into the rest of the Awakening with Astrology series to keep deepening into understanding about how these archetypes impact you and who you are.